Welcome to Rink Rap. I am Jim Cerny. We are brought to you by Forever Blueshirts. And the good-looking guy on the other side is a guy I've known, I don't want to say 3 decades because that's going to really age both of us, but it's the truth. 3 decades. I've known this guy since we first met back at Nassau Coliseum.
That's
and,
right.
Covered the Islanders, and I started broadcasting for them and all that. But very cool to hook up with Dennis Bernstein from the fourth period. Thanks for a few minutes today, bud.
It's a reminder that I used to bang my head on that pipe in the one row of seats at the press box at Nassau behind Howie Rose and those guys.
Well, yeah, but the thing was, you did that, but you weren't doing it on purpose.
No.
The fans were banging their heads against any hard out that they could, especially back in those days, the Milbury glory years.
Oh yeah. It's been a long ride, but great to be with you and have the friendship over the years for sure, Jim.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to have you. And with the Rangers picking up Arthur Kaliyev off waivers yesterday, first guy I thought of, I said, got to go to the source. I know what I know about Kaliyev, what I've seen going back to his World Junior days, when he was playing really well for Team USA, and then on forward with the Kings. But you've had a firsthand look at this guy now for several years. So we'll go to you, your scout's eye, kind of. And give the Ranger fans out there watching right now what to expect from Arthur Kaliyev.
All right. Yeah, it's a second chance situation because remember, look, the Rangers picked him up on waivers. What does that mean? Kings tried to trade him at the draft. There were no takers. Maybe a low round conditional pick. The player is a one-dimensional player. And one-dimensional players play in this league. But they have to be elite one-dimensional players. And Arthur has a great shot. He does. But the problem is, not a great skater, doesn't really play defense. Attention to detail isn't there. And, and there's some people that advocate for Arthur that had he been given the opportunity to play top 6 minutes in power play, he could score 25 to 30 goals. I don't know. He may be, he might be best case scenario, might be, and he's not the same player, but the production might be the same, like a Daniel Sprong. Like wherever Daniel Sprong goes on the fourth line, he scores 12, 13 goals. I don't think Artie's a 25-goal scorer in this league, Jimmy, because I don't think he can play top 6 minutes because of the speed and the defensive. Have you worked on his defensive game? Plus, he hasn't played in 8 months, right? I mean, he didn't finish the end of the season, didn't play much. Right. First day of training camp, got hit by Kyle Burrows, broke his clavicle. It's been a star-struck season for him. And not only that, remember, going back to last season, he was a persona non grata in the room because he asked for a trade. Like he wasn't getting playing time, and I get it. It's one of the levers you push when you're not getting your way. He asked for a trade, so he's this is a second chance for Artie, right? A lot of people had speculated Staios would pick him up in Ottawa because there was a history there with respect to his junior career. But I think the best case scenario is you put him on the bottom 6, you give him some power play time, and maybe give you some production. I think at best Artie's what he is right now, or what at best in LA was a 12, 13-minute a night guy who gave you, 10 to 12 goals. I think that because people talk about a shot, but when you look at his career statistics, and I'm not trying to run down a player because he deserves a second chance, he shot 8%, Jim. So it's not like he's had this overpowering shot that he's not Patrick Laine. He's not Ovi. He's not Kyle Connor. But could he have an opportunity on a team that needs offense? Yeah, he could. But the question is, where do you slot this player? And because of the deficiencies in his game, you would like to give an offensive player, 15 to 17 minutes as a winger. I don't see it on the Rangers. Maybe on the bottom 6, and maybe it helps his team. But I think you're going to get one thing. You're going to get is a super motivated Artie Kaliyev, because this is going to be it for him. Like if he doesn't make it in New York with a second chance, then how many guys make it on a third chance? Not many. So this is probably his best opportunity to establish himself at some level of production in the NHL.
It's interesting. Chris Kreider just landed on the IR this morning. Kaliyev is not in the lineup tonight against Dallas Stars. I mean, he just, arrived. He just arrived. He got on the ice this morning, which was good. I think there's probably a chance we see him against the Devils on Thursday. But even if it's a short run, we don't know, how long Kreider is going to be on the IR. It'd be interesting to see if they right out of the hopper try and put him in the best case scenario. All right, we'll put you out there with Mika and Riley Smith and give you some extended minutes. But I would think the concern would also be, that we could see him maybe at his best, but these would be his first games of the season. And if he struggles defensively, that could be an
Yeah.
absolute disaster in the top 6 for the Rangers.
Yeah, it's tough because, look, he just got their new system, no practice time. Like, so how are you gonna assimilate into a lineup with a different system and different teammates by not playing or not getting practice time? So it's a situation where, again, I think, Jim, what you're going to do is, like, if you do play this guy in a game, play him 10 minutes, give him 4 minutes of power play time, and spot him, offensive zone starts, end of a period, try one timer, stuff like that, because he has a shot. It's can they get the right amount of teammates to put him in a position to be productive? Didn't happen in Los Angeles. Could happen in New York. It could, but there's a lot of stuff he still needs to do to get to that point where you get trust. Because, it's a situation where you lose trust. Is a two-way street. You always talk about players trusting coaches. There's also coaches trusting players. Right. And the trust wasn't here. Remember, it's 2 different coaches last season. At the beginning of the season, it was Todd McClellan, and the second half with Jim Hiller. And they are 2 very different personalities, and Artie couldn't seem to get through to either one of them. So, again, I would manage my expectations, and I get it. The Kreider injury does impact. Like, he's not a replacement for him. Maybe helps the bottom 6 and maybe helps a little bit on the power play. I think that's the best case scenario for Arthur. But you got to manage your expectations because, again, you're drafting a guy in the middle of the season, Jimmy. It's not like, okay, he got claimed on waivers on October 5th. He'd have a whole season to get used to a new staff, now, granted, he's going home. And people say, well, it's not great to go home. There's more pressure. I don't think there's any more pressure on him. I think it's a relief for him to go home. It's a little bit more familiar being from Staten Island. So I think that could work in his favor as well. And again, the team's in desperate throes right now, so they need a player like that to help prove the offense. So maybe he gets a little better opportunity in New York than he did in LA.
It's kind of ironic too. First of all, that 2019 draft class, I mean, start blowing it up. I mean, guys, that first round, everybody's flying all over the place in this league.
Yep.
But it would be kind of ironic that within a few weeks' time, the Rangers throw in the towel on Capo Caco, the 2nd overall pick in 2019, right? Seattle says, hey, we'll take a flyer on him, but there's got to be upside here, the whole new scenery type thing, maybe get him going. And what are the Rangers who quite possibly you could be replacing Caco with Kaliyev on that 3rd line? He might be the guy that slots in, though Brett Berard's been very good there in that spot. He might be the guy that slots in with Will Cooley and Philip Hedl. And it's just the irony of it, 2 guys that were, pretty highly touted there in 2019. And you're getting rid of one because you're like, yeah, we've seen enough of this guy, to bring in another guy where LA was saying, yeah, we've seen enough of this guy. Yeah,
change the scenery works sometimes. Not all the time. It works. And you mentioned right there, that would be the perfect slot for him, right? RW3. He's a left-handed shot. He plays on his off wing. That would be the perfect one because it's not going to be the hardcore minutes. You're not going to be out there, with a minute, 30 seconds in your own defensive zone. Like, you're going to have opportunities. So, yeah. And we got to play with Gila, who's, very talented kid. And I love Will Cooley. And I keep going back. You can't connect the dots totally. But remember, that was a draft pick that they got for Elias Anderson.
Yeah.
So,
that's
so
true.
Of course, some Kings fans that want to run down the organization say, you could have Will Cooley instead of – well, I don't know if they would have drafted Will Cooley with that pick, to be honest with you. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I think best case for Artie would be RW3, establish yourself, play, 13, 14 minutes a night and be a productive player, primarily in the power play, but give a little bit on 5-on-5 as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. You brought up power play twice. And certainly you look at the numbers and, it's not quite half, but almost half of his goals come, on the power play. That's where he's at his best. Obviously not in a position where he has to worry as much about defending, et cetera, more open ice. It suits his game better. But the Rangers are so top heavy with that top first, power play unit, usually getting 90 seconds or more at times with the power plays. So to get the most out of Kaliyev, is it going to be, playing that 30 seconds on the power play here and there, or especially with Kreider out, do you take the chance of, maybe, hey, look, let's give him a shot here. The but being Alexei Lafreniere's been waiting for those minutes. Will Cooley's been waiting for those minutes. It's I think, a very difficult decision for Peter Laviolette.
It is, and it's a different style of player, right? Chris Kreider goes to the net front presence. That's not Artie's game. Artie's game is in the circle, one timer, puck in the back of the net. So it's a different look. So if you wanted a different look, Jim, you would get that with this player. But I agree with you. There's probably players on this roster who are more deserving or better suited for that extra power play time. But even the back end of a power play, maybe put him out there for the last 30 seconds and he gets a one-timer off. So I think there's a lot of maybes with this player because, again, it's the middle of the season. It's new teammates. It's getting used to a system. Is he motivated, which I assume he is? There's a lot of question marks. So people that want to see Artie out of the box, I think you got to let the smoke, dust settle a little bit for the guy who just transitioned his first trade of his career. He is going home. He had a rough go of it in Los Angeles. So I think you wait maybe a couple of days once he's more confident. Although this team needs him right now, and you mentioned the Kreider injury, which impacts the offense, so you might want to throw him in there, try him one shot. Because you know what? Sometimes you throw a player in there, give him 12 minutes, and then you assess. And then you might sit him for 1 or 2 games saying, okay, here are the gaps in this player with respect to our roster.
Right. So let's look at the Rangers here. But, bigger picture. What are they doing here? Like, okay, Jacob Trouba traded. You wiped off, $8 million AAV this year and next year. We knew Chris Drury's been trying to do that for months, got it done. Doesn't get a lot back, but he gets something back. He gets, an NHL defenseman in Vakanainen. Right. Then you trade Kakko, as we talked about, you kind of give up on him. You get Will Borgen to kind of play the Jacob Trouba role, Jacob Trouba light, if you will. But there are no difference makers here. Like, is Chris Drury just shuffling the deck, or is he shuffling the deck, trying to create cap space to make the big hit? You think at some point, whether that big hit is before the deadline or whether it's next summer when you've got a bevy of obviously very high profile free agents.
Well, I think if you're a Ranger fan and there's no more moves to make in the season, then you're super disappointed in this GM. Then all the ones asking for his head, maybe you don't want to do it. Like that's all you're going to do? Okay, you're going to – and look, I get all the narratives, right? I get it. I get it. Like, but I don't think – and I watched interviews with players like in the last couple of days that played in this league and talked about the relationship with the GM. And I've heard guys say, we don't sit in a room and bitch about the GM.
Right.
So if you want to say, oh, the Rangers aren't playing well because they hate Drury, I'm not buying it. Like when you have to, when Adam Fox has to defend Alex Ovechkin on a power play, you think he's thinking about Chris Drury? You think Mika Zibanejad is saying all my troubles and my slump and my attitude is because of the general manager? I don't think so. And remember, at the time these guys were dealt, I get it, they're glue guys. One guy was the captain. But let's be real here, Jim. Barclay Goodrow was a fourth-line player. Trouba was a third-pair defenseman. They weren't core players. But is this team that, and I hate to use the word, is this team that soft that these two guys leave the room and they fall apart? That's what it looks like it happened. They're not. It's not like they didn't trade Panarin. They didn't trade Fox. They traded like lesser players, and it was an upheaval. So I don't know. I got to think in season you got to do it because, well, it also depends. Like I know people are panicking because they're at the bottom of standings, and when you show the wild card races, the Rangers aren't even in it, but they're not that far away. If they found a way to win 8 out of 10, and they can with the talent on the team, the elite talent on this team, they could do it. Just darken out, hurt some, of course, right? But I can't think like if this team doesn't rip off an 8 out of 10 stretch, and Drury doesn't make a move, then what are you doing? Like you got to make the playoffs, right? That's not negotiable. Like you can't be behind. Like Jim, they should never be behind Columbus one day, maybe one day out of the year if Columbus plays first, the first game of the season. Right. They shouldn't be behind on these teams. They shouldn't be life and death with Montreal for a playoff spot, and they are right now. So that's why you need that 8 out of 10. This team lacks confidence. It looks like it lacks a little bit of heart. I don't know how you change it, Jim, other than the one guy who's a really bad guy, who everybody seems to hate in Vancouver, like that would be the guy to galvanize this team. I get it. I get why they want that player. It would be very costly. I'm not sure you could do it in season. I'm not sure Vancouver wants to do it because if you're going to break up that team, you're not going to make the playoffs either. But Jim, I got to think if this middling team continues and Chris Drury doesn't make a move here at the deadline, then you really got to look at his tenure and say, like, is really this the guy that should leave? I don't think he's in any danger. I don't think anything's imminent right now. I think if you miss the playoffs, there might be because Jimmy Dolan likes that extra money for those gates for the playoff games. But it's going to be real. This is now a referendum, and people will ask, well, why hasn't Laviolette been fired? And I'll just say this: that starts the clock on Drury if he fires him. Like so, every day he's in the coach, and I don't think this is on Lavi. I don't think the players have quit on Lavi. I don't know what happened. I think they're pissed off about the situation in the room. It's going to be very, very interesting to see. But lack of not a big move in season. This team continues to play 500, 525 hockey. You got to make a move. This is the New York Rangers.
So we've heard Chris Kreider's name mentioned a lot. People, I mean, Ranger fans want Mika Zibanejad out, but he's got the no move clause. I know your fourth period buddy, Dave Pagnotta, was reporting that he had heard, he had been told that Zibanejad would be willing to waive his no trade or his no move clause in, I guess, specific situation.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess, what can you tell us to that end? What have you heard that might be out there? And I would think right now, well, obviously Kreider's on IR. I think he was a tough guy to trade anyway, with his injuries this season, with his declining production. His salary, I guess, is workable, but it is for another few years. So I'm kind of building all that up. Kreider right now, you can't move while he's on IR. So let's focus on what you've heard and maybe touch on Mika, which I don't see that happening, but start with him and then share with us what else you've heard.
Well, with Mika, I think that when you watch body language and facial expressions and stuff like that, I think I wouldn't doubt that if there was another destination he'd like to play at, that he would welcome the move, right? But it's got to be a contending team, right? Number one, could he go to Vancouver? I mean, I don't hear players turning down trades to Vancouver very often, because it's a really nice place to play and live. So
I wouldn't turn down a trade to Vancouver.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to touch on Kreider first. Like, I get it, his decline. Like, maybe he's not a 40-goal scorer, but if he's a 30-goal scorer, Jim, at $6.5 million a year, like, where are you going to replace that player? Like, if you trade that player, you're going to get back a similar 30-goal scorer at that price? No, you're not. You're probably going to get back a lesser player, and you're probably going to trade the best player in the trade, which you don't want to do. I would not advocate trading Chris Kreider. I would try to move Mika. I would. I just to win in this league, like, you need legit, like, players down the middle. And I don't think, like, and we're talking about a championship team here, a team that I picked to win the Stanley Cup. So I'm being totally transparent. Like, Mika Zibanejad is not a 1C on a championship team. He's not. He had some great seasons. Like, when he was going great. He was the dominant player. But I watched the last two seasons. They can't win a Stanley Cup with him as a 1C. So I would do my due diligence if I'm jury and have a conversation, if it already hasn't happened, about where you might want to go, and I would press some other teams to see if they could broker to do that. Now, it might not make the team as good. I just don't see it anymore. Like, and I think that I think the real issue, Jim, to be honest with you, was the offseason, where this GM believed in his team, and the only move he made was Riley Smith. And there were gaps on the team, and he didn't address them, and he thought he had the team. I thought he had the team. So I don't think there's anything imminent, Jim. I think that once we get to, like, the Four Nations, like, I need to see where this team is, like, let's say a month away from the trade deadline, right? Because, the schedule lightens up a little bit. Maybe they put on a little bit of a run. I don't see anything imminent right now. And if I had to trade one player, it would be Zibanejad, not Kreider, because I think Kreider means too much to this team. And I know he's worn down. And again, the facial perspective, the room is just in such a terrible state. Now, if you bring in JT Miller, it's going to be a different story. It's going to be a different type of room. It may be more adversarial in the room.
Different.
Yeah, right. Might be for the better, might be for the worse. I don't know. But I don't see it. But if I had to pick a player to trade, I just don't believe in Mika anymore. I think it's been too long of mediocre, subpar play, and your expectations to say that. Now, it's going to make him difficult to trade because he's the lesser player right now. That's why it makes it difficult. You have to find a landing spot. You have to like, you're not going to get equal value. Like, you're not going to get back a 1C for this player. What do you get back? And do you get something that helps right now? And that's the key. If one of those two guys are traded, Jim, and it's not for, like, equal value or comparable players, and it's for futures, then they're waving a white flag on the season. And that's got to be troublesome for a team that was many people like myself picked to win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about that too is, in season, especially if somebody's taking on Mika at $8+ million for many, 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 many more years, Rangers got to take back money. So we talk about futures here. Sure. Yeah. It sounds great. Maybe the headliner is, we got their first round pick or whatever, or we got this prospect, but you're going to have to eat some money back because there is not a single contender in the NHL right now that can take on,
Yeah,
Mika,
eight.
at $8 million a year. It's tough. So quick final one for you. And you touched on it. You said, they could easily go on a, 8 out of 10 run. They'll probably need to at some point. And I agree. I wake up and throughout this whole putrid stretch, they were, lost 16 of 21 and everything.
Yep.
Every morning I look at the standings. I go through, okay, they won, they lost Detroit's won 4 in a row. At the end of the day, they were sitting 14th in the Eastern Conference, 4 points out of that second wild card, and had a game in hand on everybody but 2 teams ahead of them. And who scares you there? Detroit, Ottawa, Montreal, Pittsburgh. All of a sudden, these teams are, we can't leapfrog these teams. People think I'm nuts. And, whether they make the playoffs or not doesn't change my life any. But I really think that, I would bet on them to make the playoffs. 41, they still have 43 games to go. I would bet on them to make the playoffs, despite all the crappy play I've seen, over the last 2 months. And even before that, even before they hit this lull, Shesterkin and Quick were saving their bacon, for about a 2-3 week stretch before they even hit this lull. So, or, the losing skid. So anyway, all that said, they're forcing Dennis, you got to push your chips to the center of the table. Yeah. Is this team making the playoffs? And if they make the playoffs, are they capable of a run? Or are they just going to make the playoffs? Or are they just, it's just not the year. Everything's just gone to hell. It's gone sour. Not going to happen. You're pushing your chips to the middle. What are you saying?
I think, like big picture here, Jim, like this team was 11-4-1. Like I think, and so when I talk to people around, like I go to the Warner Classic, like the first conversation was always the Rangers. Like what happened? What happened? They fell out of the sky. It wasn't like, they started 8-8 and then it turned over, and they've been playing for 100. They look like world beaters, right? So to answer your question, here's the thing, right? None of those teams above the Rangers right now should scare the Rangers, right? No question. Like maybe a little concerned with Detroit because they've won 4 straight with Tom McClellan. I was with Todd for 4.5 years. He's a really good coach. He's going to put in structure. They're going to play harder, right? There's no reason for them not to make the playoffs. There's so much racetrack left, Jim. But here's the thing. This team that's playing right now, they're not making the playoffs. They got to go find that team they had earlier in the season, Jim. That team will make the playoffs. But, like, if you're a Ranger fan right now to wave the white flag, and I get it, it's been horrible. Like, the team sucks at home. They can't win at home. Like, they're 8-9-1 at home.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. And they're 5, like, they're 10-11 on the road, Jim. They had any decent play at home, they'd be in a playoff spot right now. It'd be less chatter around it. But every day the Rangers are out of a playoff spot, the noise is going to continue and get louder, right? Because you're going to run out of racetrack. If this was game 79 and they're 4 points out, everybody's nervous. It's game 39. Relax. There's still a 4 Nations tournament to play. So I would not say, did they have to turn it around? Absolutely. If I had to bet, I'd bet them as the second wild card because I really like what Tampa Bay's doing, and they're kind of under the radar. They've lost 4 straight, but I would say they're a 2 seed. And right now, if they got in as a 2 seed, who would they play? They play the Capitals. Could the Rangers beat the Capitals in the playoffs? They did it all the time. Now, this team against that team, not right now. But you don't know. You play the 40 games, you play it out. So, Jim, you're not crazy to say the Rangers can make the playoffs because you mentioned the 6 teams ahead of them. Montreal, Pittsburgh, Ottawa's doing really well until the goalie gets hurt. Columbus, Philadelphia, and Detroit. Okay. The best of those, I think, is probably Detroit. So it's the Rangers and Detroit for the last wild card. Do I think they'll do damage? I don't know. I'd like them to get in the playoffs because it will keep my Ranger pick up a Stanley Cup alive. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. They need a lot, and they also need something from 13 too. He hasn't been great. All their what has to happen is what I forecasted them to when they win. All their elite players need to be elite, and Adam Fox needs everybody's subpar. That's the one thing about this team. Like, who's having a great season, Jim?
Not
who's
one.
Having like a knock it out of the park season. So there's room to elevate for all the elite players. I'm not sure about that second pay with Vakanainen and Borgen. I'm not sure that's going to be an improvement. So you're going to have some struggle. So it's going to be, I think they can. But to answer your question, I think Ranger fans are going to sweat it out probably till the end of March, early April. Unless there's a big move by this team. They can make it. But the way they're playing now, they won't make it. But I'm with you. I think they'll find a way to sneak in. It's just I have my doubts about their ability to win against any of the top teams in the playoffs.
Well, great stuff, Dennis. Appreciate your time today. Fans, of course, can catch you on Sirius XM, and would love to talk to you down the road again because it's always informative and it's just fun. It's like hanging out at the Collie and the two of us just shooting the breeze, right?
You guys talking hockey for sure, Jim. Always a pleasure, Jim. Appreciate the time, man.
That's Dennis Bernstein from the fourth period.